All right, well, welcome to this session on basic chord structure. I hope you are a patient soul because chord structure as a whole takes a little while to grasp. Thankfully, we're going to stay very basic in this session. Here we're going to look at the structure of major chords, minor chords, and all versions of seventh chords. You're probably going to want to find a notation chart for your particular instrument to use as a reference throughout this session. You may also want to watch the previous sessions on notation, the major scale, and the minor scale before you dive into this one. Most chords are structured from 3 or more notes that form a sonic combination. The major chord is a combination of 3 notes. So let's look at the C major chord, but first let's look at the C major scale so we can see how the chord itself is formed. In the previous session on the major scale, we determined the notes for the C major scale. In that same session on the major scale, we briefly discussed the assigning of numbers to the notes of that particular scale. So here are the number assignments for the C major scale. These numbers are critical in knowing how chords are structured. These numbers are assigned the same way to any key, but for now, we're just going to stick with the key of C major. These 8 notes construct many different chords. Remember, these numbers are not specific to any key. They will fit any key, and the formulas for chords that we're about to discuss will fit in any key as well. So let's first look at the chords that are made up solely from the major scale, which are the major chord and the major 7th chord. The major chord is built from 3 notes in any major scale, and those notes are the first note, the 3rd note, and the 5th note of whatever key that you're working with. In the scale of C major, those notes are C, E, and G. These 3 notes make up the chord of C major. If you form a C major chord on your instrument, then check your notation chart, you'll find that all the notes in the chord are either C, E, or G. You can use this formula in any key. So let's use the key of G major for another example. Here are the notes that make up the scale of G major as we discovered in the session on the major scale. Following the formula for the major chord, we know that the major chord is made up of the 1st, 3rd, and 5th note in that major scale. So in the G major scale, the 1st note is G, the 3rd note is B, and the 5th note is D. Therefore, the G major chord is constructed entirely of G, B, and D. If you form the chord on your instrument and check your notation chart, you'll find that the formula is true. Take this example and pick any note. Write out the major scale for that note, then take the 1st, 3rd, and 5th notes of that major scale, and that will form a major chord in that key. Now, the other chord that we're going to discuss that's made up of notes in the major scale is the major 7th chord. The major 7th chord has a formula as well. The major 7th chord is constructed of the 1st, 3rd, 5th, and 7th notes of the major scale in the corresponding major scale. So let's construct the C major 7th chord. Here are the notes of the C major scale once again. Now, the C major 7th chord is constructed of the 1st, 3rd, 5th, and 7th notes of the major scale. So in the key of C major, the 7th chord is formed with the notes C, E, G, and B. Now, check a chord diagram for your instrument. Make a C major 7th chord, and then check a notation chart, and you'll find that all of these notes in the C major 7th chord are in fact C, E, G, or B. Let's look once more at the key of G as well to do the same exercise for the major 7th chord. Here are the notes in the G major scale. We see here that the 1st, 3rd, 5th, and 7th notes of the G major scale are G, B, D, and F sharp. These notes combine to make up the G major 7th chord. You can once again check your chord diagram, form the chord on your instrument, then check a notation chart, and you'll find that the G major 7th chord is totally constructed of these notes. You'll find the same formula works for the major 7th chord in any key. Try this formula on a few more keys and make sure to start with the major scale of the key for which you want to find the major 7th chord. Now, let's shift gears over to the minor scale and look at the 2 chords that apply to us that come solely from the minor scale. The minor chord and the minor 7th chord are the 2 chords that we'll be working with that are built entirely from that minor scale. First, let's take a look at the minor chord. For the sake of ease, we'll use the same keys that we used in the previous session on the minor scale. So let's first look at the A minor chord. The minor chord is constructed of the first, third, and fifth notes of the minor scale. So here are the notes in the scale of A minor. You'll find here that the first, third, and fifth notes of the A minor scale are A, C, and E. Now look at a chord diagram for your instrument and form an A minor chord. Then look at a notation chart and you'll find that the A minor chord is entirely built up of the notes A, C, and E. Now, let's look at the minor chord in the key of E minor. If necessary, listen back to the session on the minor scale to see how we determine the notes for the E minor scale. Here are the notes for that scale. Now, following the formula for the minor chord, let's take the first, third, and fifth notes of the scale and form the E minor chord. Now we see that the E minor chord is made up of the notes E, G, and B. Now, go to a chord diagram, form the E minor chord, then check a notation chart and you'll find that the formula is correct, that the E minor chord is constructed entirely of these notes, E, G, and B. Now, take the formula for the minor scale and the formula for the minor chord and do the exercise for a few other keys. Remember to watch the session on the minor scale if you need to and check a notation chart if you're unsure about notes. The other chord that's formed from the minor scale is the minor seventh chord. This chord is formed from the first, third, fifth, and seventh notes of the minor scale of the same key. So let's look at the example in the A minor scale. Once again, here are the notes of the A minor scale. The first, third, fifth, and seventh notes of the A minor scale are A, C, E, and G. So the A minor seventh chord is entirely made up of these notes. Once more, let's jump back to the E minor scale. Here are the notes from the E minor scale that we looked at before. The formula for the minor seventh chord is once again the first, third, fifth, and seventh notes in the scale. So the E minor seventh chord is constructed from the notes E, G, B, and D. Now let's look again at the chord diagram and form the E minor seventh chord on your instrument. Then check a notation chart and you'll find that the E minor chord is formed entirely of these notes. Now, feel free to watch this session on basic chord construction until you feel confident in your knowledge. Also, practice forming all of the different types of chords in a few different keys. You probably already know a few chords, and now you can find out where they come from and what notes actually help construct each chord. Chord structure is never ending. There are always new chords to learn and new voicings to learn for chords that maybe you've been playing for years. Always strive to improve your chord vocabulary. This is going to help you be better at reading chord charts, enhance your ability to learn and memorize songs, as well as improvise and even write songs and parts more creatively. Chord structure is the foundation that you'll need to understand how chords are put together to make chord progressions. So, study hard, stay focused, and you'll have it down in no time at all.